All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be an awesome podcast today. I feel like I'm going to learn a lot on this episode. Right before we get into it, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties when they transition from active duty back to civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. If you want to reach out to VetLife, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, I want to introduce the Jareds. Jared Johnson, Jared Wangler. Jared, I'm going to start with you. Basically, the way that I start most of my podcast episodes is I kind of build the subject for who you are, what shaped you as a young man. But we'll do like an expedited version for this. We'll have you kind of tell your basic origin story, and we'll have Jared Johnson do his as well. And then we'll really dig into the topics that we want to get into today. So what were you like as a young man? Where were you born and raised? What were the things that were influential to you?
Sounds great. Appreciate you for having us on. I'm from Royal Oak, Michigan, so born and raised about 15 minutes outside of Detroit. Grew up in a large household, eight people total, so six kids, my parents. Everyone's pretty much around the same age. I'm 26 now, and it ranges from 25 up to 32. So a lot of different activities growing up. You know, you're always kind of stimulated with brothers and sisters around. I'm the second youngest, so kind of got pushed around by my older brothers growing up. Kind of made me tougher, but everyone played sports. My dad played college football at the University of Michigan, so that was a pretty big influence throughout our entire life. 5 out of the 6 kids in my family went to the University of Michigan. My brother and I both played football together. My sister played basketball there, so sports have always just kind of been at my core, and it's exciting now that I get to actually do something in the sports realm for my career, for my line of work. So that's my passion. Played a huge role in my development growing up, and it continues to play a huge role in my development as a young professional.
Yeah, that's massive. When you're that engulfed and immersed in something as a child, especially if you have a father that led the way. He didn't preach about it. He didn't say, hey, sports are going to be good for you. No, he led the way, went and played college football, basically started the legacy at U of M, and then you guys have followed in his footsteps, and that's an incredible start. Sports and athletics in general really build so many parts of our characteristics, right? Like they build us as a person. You learn hard work, you learn accountability, you learn responsibility, and if you have those type of things, it kind of spills over into everything that you do for the rest of your life. And Jared, to turn it over to you, Jared Johnson, what were you like as a young man? Were you born and raised here in Michigan, and what kind of guided your compass as a young kid?
Yeah, so again, thanks for having us here. So I grew up in the Upper Peninsula, so a little bit different than your area, more woods and stuff. But
like what area? Escanaba?
By Sault Ste. Marie. Yep. So, my dad was a corrections officer for 22 years. There was a prison up there. They took an old air base and turned it into a prison. So they made the barracks like a prison, which when I joined the military, it still kind of made sense. But, I grew up there playing sports. Obviously I didn't get to go to U of M. I wasn't as good as Jared here. But, so sports is a big deal to me. I went down to a community college when I graduated high school to play basketball in Alpena, and then 9/11 happened. So, my family had a big history in the military. We have fought in every war since the Civil War, and nobody has died, which is it's like the opposite of Lieutenant Dan's family in Forrest Gump, right? But so my family goes all the way back to the Civil War. My grandma's on her side, there was 5 brothers that went to the Civil War, and all of them came back. So very, very crazy. But I joined after 9/11, right? It was my duty. So. Deployed to Iraq right at the beginning, the second year. It was a very hectic time there. Then I came home and I got into recruiting. I just have a gift of talking to people. I loved the job, so I got into that. But education was always important to me, so I got my bachelor's degree in marketing. I got my master's degree in management. I'm actually finishing my doctorate in business administration right now, doing a dissertation process. I became an officer, and then I became a company commander for recruiting. Came back full circle to recruiting, and that's kind of how our paths crossed for one of the cool deals that I've ever done in my life. So
what an incredible lineage to come from, to know that's a part of your bloodline, to know that your family has literally served the country and the people
absolutely
for hundreds of years.
Yeah, I have a sword at my house that my I don't know, great, whatever it is.
How many greats?
Yeah, exactly. But he was actually in Sherman's March to the Sea to end the Civil War, and I have his sword from that march. So, and we have the story that tells all about it, and it's pretty incredible. So,
That's incredible. And we could do
Yeah.
a full podcast just on that, but we're gonna. That's incredible.
Yep.
So let's start to build it up this way. So basically, Jared, you obviously had to get this company up and rolling first. You had a spark. You had an idea. I want you to kind of tell me what led to you launching your own company, your own brand. You know, what your background was, because you tied into it a little bit before the podcast. What
Right.
got you to roll into that, and then basically how you guys got to start to work in a partnership.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I like to say, like, you know, a little bit early in the episode, like, my background is sports, right? I wouldn't say it's nearly as ingrained as Jared's background in the military, and it's extremely admirable, kind of the way he's followed his bloodline, and you can tell, like, in our conversations, he's so passionate about his line of work. I knew coming out of college, I wanted to find something that I'm extremely passionate in, and I didn't really care about falling on my face as many times as it took to find that, right? So, like, I went and played football at the University of Michigan, knew I wanted to be in the sports realm, and I really had an interest in being a sports agent. And so right after I graduated, I actually started like sending out applications to the big sports agencies to just try to get like an internship. But I was unsuccessful in my first like 3 different companies I interviewed for. And then I was like, okay, well, I just finished my graduate degree in real estate development, had a really good real estate brokerage job kind of lined up. So after graduation, I was unsuccessful with those internships with the sports agencies. I took the job with the real estate company. And you know, in a way, you graduate from the University of Michigan, you're a little bit desensitized because a lot of your friends are getting big jobs in investment banking or private equity, and they're making pretty sizable salaries coming out. So it was easy to get caught up in that. And I said, all right, I'm going to pause, a pursuit of being a sports agent. I'm going to get into commercial real estate, and I want to make this money, and, you know, I want to be successful early on. And I just learned that that's just not the recipe for success. Like, I was waking up and I was doing everything I needed to do for the real estate company, and I was making good money, but I wasn't excited. And I remember just being in the comparison game with my friends out in New York. Like, everyone's talking about what they're making, you know, doing this, that. And it just like wasn't what made me happy. So then I was like, well, maybe is it me because I'm still in the state of Michigan? Maybe if I move to another city, pursue something else, I'll figure out if that's what I want to do. So moved to Chicago, started working for a medical device company called Stryker. And, you know, again, chasing a job with a big company that I could make a lot of money on, being in a new city, thought that would be the answer. And God had other plans. A week and a half into that, coronavirus hits, pandemic, hospitals are pausing all elective surgeries. You know, I'm told by my director that, hey, you know, you're still employed, you're still making your money, but we're not going to be actually on the job, on the site for 2 months. So I came back to Michigan, and I was just kind of chilling at home because of the pandemic and kind of just like losing my mind because all of my other friends seemed like they were somewhat enjoying, they're making money, and I'm just kind of sitting at home, still employed, but like not really actually working. So I hit up my my mentor by the name of Mike McCartney. He was a big-time sports agent. He was one of the guys that was encouraging me to take the leap of faith and do it. And so I just started interning for him for free. Basically, like, wasn't making any money, but was kind of learning the space, helping him recruit, and just seeing what it took to be an agent. And then after, you know, about 6 months of doing that, you know, unpaid internship work for him, I decided to move back to Michigan full-time, start my MBA, because at the time I was like, you know, I want to be an on-the-field NFL agent, and you need to have some sort of master's degree to sit for that exam. And so started my MBA, and then right around that time was January 2021 when the rule change took place where college athletes, the conversation around the rule change started taking place. That actual change didn't take place until July 1st, 2021. So I like to think I had like a 5-month head start to like build a company around what I thought it would look like. And ever since then, I've just been on the ground running $1 million per hour, building a company around it. And now we have a sports marketing agency that's done close to $2 million worth of deals for U of M student athletes. And, you know, this partnership that we can get into with Jared is like really been one of the most exciting developments of starting this company because it validates, you know, all the great things that come with this new rule change, and being able to be, you know, the center of that at the University of Michigan for my alma mater and literally create deals and bring money to guys I played with, because I still have former teammates that are seniors on the team now. It's just been a dream come true, and it's just the beginning to what I want to be, you know, my long-term career.
And you can drastically alter the course of someone's life through the enhancements that you're bringing to them with deals like this.
Oh, yeah.
It is, instead of being the broke college kid trying to get by that's going, you know what, I have to go do all these other things. I can't commit to my craft. I got to get this job or do this thing or meet this obligation. You're completely changing the playing field as this law has changed. Like, you're completely changing the game for these people. So it's a pivotal role that you're playing.
Absolutely. I mean, look, one of the most impactful moments of my career was 4 months into it, 4 months into the rule change, setting up a signing event for a player on the team. After I went and handed him his check from that signing event, he was in tears. This is the most money I've ever made at one time. And he looked at it, he's like, he's not going to go spend it on speech. He was going to go send it back to his family. So like that just shows like a lot of these athletes, they come and they play college sports and they bring so much value to a multi-billion-dollar industry. The fact that the check was, a 4-figure number. It wasn't a 5-figure, 6 or 7-figure. It was a 4-figure number, but in tears, because he's like, I've never had this much money at one time. Like, thank you so much. So just that moment, it just showed like I have a passion for doing that, because it's exciting to me to be in the space. It's a dream come true, but you actually feel like you're impacting other people's lives for the better, and they're looking at you as a resource for them. So that's exciting to be.
100%. And there's a thing that I witness actually with the fighters in here. It's hard enough in this culture to chase a dream. It is extremely difficult to go for what you want, despite all the obstacles that you're going to run into, in defiance of all the words that you're going to hear from other people. Like, it's hard to chase a dream. So to chase a dream and be broke and be viewed differently by people is so much harder. So you're kind of changing that. There's 2 questions I want to ask you about before we jump into the partnership here. Number 1, you said from a young age you were just willing to fail your way to success. Where does that come from?
It's a great question. I think a lot of it comes from my father, because he has been somebody I look up to. A lot of people look at him. He's a successful football player at the University of Michigan, played quarterback late 70s, early 80s for Bo Schembechler, and he's done very well for himself outside of football. I grew up, people were like, oh, your dad, legendary quarterback, but I look at him as just, he's a successful businessman and a successful entrepreneur. And the number one thing he kept telling me coming out of college, because he could tell that I was very discouraged because I wasn't finding the passion in what I was doing, is that, hey, look, like, your 20s are not meant to build up your bank account. Like, you can fall, you can go broke 3 to 4 different times. You don't have the responsibility that you would have in your 30s. So just take a shot. And just the amount of encouragement I got from him and from my siblings, it really helped me kind of push through, because there were some dark times where you just didn't know where your next, check was coming from. And like, I wasn't the one to try to, reach out to others to try to help me out to get through. Like, I would have rather gone broke, not have any money, be in my young 20s, like, just barely skate by, but know that it had purpose to it. And I knew that, like, when I was missing paychecks because I left my job at Stryker to pursue being an agent and wasn't making any money at the time, I knew that I was setting myself up for long-term success, and that be able to look past that was really what was, able to kind of launch a successful company.
No, that is massive, and it's amazing. It's a huge shout out to your father and your family to lay the groundwork of that type of foundation and encouragement for you to be able to fail your way to success, because every entrepreneur talks about that you're going to have to fail over and over and over again. Like, I had countless years where I was so unbelievably broke, where I was getting a letter from the bank being like, hey, we're going to take your home from you if you don't make your payment by this date.
Right.
I had a Mustang Cobra that I loved. It got repossessed out of my driveway. A tow truck came and while I was chasing the dream, and
Right.
there is a lot of, failing your way to success, and everybody preaches about it, but really setting up, your family or the people that your friends or the people that you care about with that encouragement and that, like, man, go for it.
Right.
Go for it, because everyone on the other side will tell you to do it. Your mentor said to do it. Your father said to do
Absolutely.
it. All the people I know in my life that are very successful financially or personally or professionally, they say the same thing. You got to go for it.
Yep.
But I'm telling you what, when you're extremely broke and society is viewing you in one way, it's a lot harder.
Agreed. Well, one thing, just kind of jump in, because I remember like a defining moment, like when I had just moved back and I was interning for that agency, and like I wasn't getting a paycheck obviously from them. I was actually doing deliveries for my dad's company, and he's got an apparel distributorship here in Metro Detroit, where a lot of the high schools and businesses there for their uniforms, employee uniforms. His company actually supplies those. So I was actually just going around in a minivan, dropping off clothes
Doing
to
what
high
you had
schools.
to do.
Yep.
And I was like, out of high school, I was an Under Armour All-American, highly rated recruit. I remember dropping off apparel to a high school, and like a high school football coach was like, oh, nice. Like, this is kind of what you're doing now. Like, this is great. And I just remember like sitting there and like,
It's not great.
Yeah. Right. And like literally like holding back so
Yeah.
much anger, but like, it wasn't anger at that individual or myself. It was kind of just like, I know this is not the lifestyle for me. I'm not going to just be, this person. Like, I have such a big dream that I want to accomplish, but it was honestly one of the best things for me at the time, because it just like validated, like, money is not everything when you're chasing something. Like, like it'll take a lot of time, missed paychecks to get to where you want to be, but it makes it so much more rewarding when you're pursuing it and you're kind of hitting those green lights to get to where you want to be.
And you had the vision, right? Like you have to be able to see a future that you want. Otherwise it becomes like hopeless. Like if you don't know where you're trying to go and you're unhappy, let's say, you're getting your paycheck, you were with a company where you're making money, but it wasn't, really resonating with you.
Absolutely.
If you don't have vision, it's like, am I going to do this for the next 20 years, the next 30 years? Am I just going to be, I got a paycheck, but I'm miserable? Like, no, you got to create a vision. And you knew, okay, there's something in sports. And did you know, like, even from high school, you wanted to be an agent or just something in the sports realm?
I knew that I liked, like, being around athletes, right? And obviously I'm an athlete myself. Like I just love kind of like that locker room culture, but I knew that I wanted to work with athletes. And I think just like my perspective on life and my perspective on business would have been suitable to being an agent. Now, like up until about a year and a half ago, I thought I wanted to be an on-field agent, somebody that's representing NFL players and doing their contracts with the franchises, which is why I had started my MBA. But the rule change for the NIL, the whole space just kind of blossomed up out of nowhere. And I was able to position my company to being, one of the more prominent sports marketing agencies for college athletes. So that is kind of where my path has taken me. I'm not ruling out down the road if I'll eventually finish my MBA and be an on-the-field agent, but I'm so passionate and I love what I'm doing now. Like this position that I have now in this company allows me to do these kind of partnerships with the National Guard and something that's like unprecedented. So I'm just, continuing trying to just stack little wins there and see where the career takes me.
So let's shift it to Jared. It's funny, Jared
Right,
Johnson. Let's start to
Lieutenant Jared.
Let's get your perspective of how your career has built up, how you normally approached, marketing for the National Guard and like what a general strategy is, what your business looks like or not. It's not your business, but what the overall field looks like in general. And then when you saw these things changing and you're like, wait a second, athletics is a massive part of our culture. Patriotism is a massive part of our culture. Military service, like these might be able to link up. Kind of build that story up.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
me.
So it's kind of funny too, though, when you tie in the military to like how his career is, right? So in the military, you start as a private, and they don't pay you anything, and it's the same. You gotta see a vision, like you said. So very early in my career, I said I want to join. I'm going to get my degree. I'm going to pursue becoming a senior non-commissioned officer, so not an actual officer, and then I'm going to switch to become an officer. So I had that goal, and that's how I went through it.
How'd you create that?
I don't know. I saw some officers early on in my career that had been on the enlisted side first. That like the enlisted side of the military, that's like who does it, right? That's who goes and gets it done, and they were just better officers because they understood, right? They've been there, right? They
have the real world experience.
Yeah, they clean the toilets. So when they tell you to clean the toilets, they know it sucks, but it's got to be done. So I just kind of had that vision early in my career. So that's how I went through it. I came back again. I said I came back from Iraq, became a recruiter, and that is building your own brand. Back then in recruiting, it was like, here's a vehicle for you to drive around in, and here's a computer to go find people to enlist, and you got to brand yourself. So I started doing my own branding. I started working with high school sports. I was always a sports guy, too. I was comfortable in that space like he is. And I figured that, hey, this is the kids we want, right? The leaders, the kids that have vision, the kids that work hard and do those things. They get up at 6 in the morning. So when we tell them to get up at 4, it's just a little bit earlier, right? And then I transitioned through that phase, and then once I got my degree, you have to have a degree to become an officer, so I went to officer candidate school. It's like a 58-day course where they just break you down. I was in the Black Hills of South Dakota, lost like 29 pounds in 58 days. It was pretty exciting. I had a lot of fun with it. I liked it.
Did you do that as like a challenge? Like I just feel like when I look at like I have buddies who have gone through military training, and like some of them, it just their personality traits, it like absolutely broke them, and they didn't do too well. But like some of them that I actually look up to, like they just view like those kind of training, experience as a challenge to get through.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like anything in your life, I had people who looked at me and were like, oh, you'll never be an officer. And I was like, all right, fair enough. So, yeah, I look at everything as a challenge. I get through a lot of that stuff. Like, you're not going to break me. I'm not going to quit. So let's go do this for 58 days and see what happens. And it was pretty cool. And so then I came back and became an officer, and I actually deployed again. I went to Kosovo. I just got back last summer. And then when I came back, recruiting military-wise, I don't know if you guys have seen anything about that. It's at the lowest it's been since 1978.
Yeah, I was seeing that.
It's
been reading
terrible.
about it. It's extremely low.
Horrible. Yeah,
It's kind of alarming.
Yeah, but
given
there's
what's,
been-
it's borderline
right?
dangerous. Yeah.
I mean, there's been a cultural shift in a lot of ideologies that are preached that are almost against the military. There's a lot of anti-patriotism. There's a lot of
Yes.
There's a lot of hate, aimed at the wrong people. A lot of
Yeah.
misguided,
Right.
and it's affecting culture for sure. And yeah, the recruitment rates have plummeted.
Yeah, they're low,
to a non-sustainable
low 50s,
level, right?
Low 50%. So yeah, so I came back into recruiting as a company commander, and I had already thought of this idea when I was working in the aviation unit, which this will all tie in. And I kind of pitched it, and everybody was like, "Man, that's crazy. You can't do that." I said, "Listen, the kids we're trying to reach are 17 to 24. There are influencers in that market, and they're college athletes, and we want these kids because they have to pass a aptitude test, right? They have to be smart. They have to. So we want these kids to influence those other kids to say that we're cool. Like you said just a minute ago, right? It's perception of the military has changed. Back when I was, back in the early mid-2000s, the military was cool. We were Times Person of the Year. Like, we were awesome.
No, when I was growing up,
You
man,
know?
like Top Gun and Navy SEALs, and
Yeah.
I mean that was like the American hero. Everyone kind of looked up to that image and figure,
Yeah.
and that's what's changed.
And it has, yeah. And the wars have tapered off, so it's not on the news. We're not on the news, like, doing all these heroic things anymore. And people just, the new generation kind of has tapered away from it. So I had this brilliant idea to partner with college athletes. I thought Michigan, because I've always been a Michigan fan since birth. So, and I'd said, hey, we have helicopters. Let's put these kids up in helicopters. Let's let them use their Instagram, do live, show what we can do, and tell kids in their demographic, hey, the National Guard is cool, man. Like, look what they do. And then, it was funnier, I told you earlier, I didn't know how to do it, right? NIL's new. I didn't know if there was an agency. There was out there. So I'm fangirling these kids, DMing them and stuff. And they're like, who's this creepy old guy? They're not even opening them.
How else would you have done it?
I don't know, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I literally DM'd probably 100 athletes. And I didn't get a single response.
Yeah, all you do is DM the former athlete.
Yeah, so then I found him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it said, it had his email address, and I hit him up. And to be fair, we were talking earlier. You said responsiveness and people skills. I think it was like 2.2 seconds he responded. It was quick.
Yep.
I got a call from him, and the rest is
there.
kind of history, man. It was crazy. We put our heads together, and it grew.
That's the exciting part about this, because it started as like a simple, like, okay, what if we just did this with like 4 players?
Yeah.
Then I was like, well, like, what if we added 6 more players? And then like 3 months later, I was like, hey man, what if we just have the whole team come? And then like it was funny because it's the military. They have to have like the flight rosters and all these different things. And these guys, I thought they were just gonna be sick of me at a certain point because I just kept adding and adding. And like it was the summertime, so a lot of the athletes weren't on campus, so it was tough to communicate to get like hard yeses or hard nos from players. But then so it just got to a point where I got in front of the entire team like, hey, you guys are all gonna do this and you're all gonna love it. And nobody pushed back. They're like, oh, we get to go on helicopters? Oh wait, we actually get to get paid to do this? Like, it's an NIL deal. So there's so many things like clicked and made sense. And there's a credit to Jared and his team for being so flexible and just like kind of just letting us just throw stuff at the wall and seeing what's stuck. So we were able to take his idea and then just continue to grow it. And, within our first week of announcing the campaign, 100 and something thousand video impressions. A couple hundred followers growth on their Instagram page. So the applications were up. I mean, there was a lot of different really cool metrics to kind of spin off of it. And we're not even really halfway through the campaign yet. There's still so much more content to put out there from some of the more prominent players on the Michigan football team. And these guys are excited. I mean, you talk to a Cade McNamara or a Blake Corum or J.J. McCarthy. I mean, these guys are pretty well known throughout the state of Michigan, if not throughout, all of college football. And they're raving about their excitement about the partnership. They're still going to be, they still have their social media requirements to put out there. Their following is really strong, really engaged. So it's just, it's really cool to see this thing come to fruition.
And it makes sense when you take two people that have a project that is similar and you're both passionate, you're both trying to be creative and innovative in ways to be able to branch out and expand your sphere of influence, and you come together, well, of course it's going to just snowball. You know what I mean? You have the energy being poured in from both directions about like, what can we do? How big can we go?
Right.
What impact can we make? And it makes perfect sense to tie in the idea of like the college athletes to the military, because they are kind of cream of the crop. To play college sports in general, you are already a notch above most people because of the commitment, the dedication to your craft, the hours of training that you had to go through to get there. So it makes perfect sense on why you would tie these things in together. And as somebody that's been in athletics and now the military service, you probably see a ton of parallels between what you learned on the sports field and what you learned in the military. Would you say that's true?
That's exactly it, and that's exactly so to go back to where we were at in January. I think that's when we met the first time. January. We just pulled this thing off in July, by the way. It took us 7 months. So back in January, I'm trying to pitch this
January of this year.
Yes.
So this just came to fruition. This is awesome.
It's
I
just
know,
happened.
we're fresh off.
This is hot off the stove.
We're still in the thick of it. I mean, we
Yeah.
got players that are still going to be posting this week.
Yep.
Going to be sending them more insights. We're still going.
Yep. So back in January, so we sit down and I will share with you. So Sergeant Major Dave Lewis, my right hand man on this, he can't be here today, but we sat down with him and we wanted 6 guys, right? We'll put 6 guys up in one helicopter. It'll be super easy. They can't say no to that. We leave, and I'm like standing in the parking lot. It's snowing, and I looked at him. I go, well, that got out of control. Because now I'm like, we got to go tell them we need 150 people. We need 9 helicopters. We're talking thousands of dollars. But I was all for it, because it never happened before, and I'm a big idea guy. So like I ask no. I ask until they say no until they say yes. You just keep asking. So it's kind of how it went. And this thing went all the way up to National Guard levels in Washington, D.C. Department of the Army was involved, and they were all saying, you can't do this. But we would say, but why? Where? Show us where you can't.
Right.
He didn't know this, but the day prior to this actually happening, we still had not gotten a yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. When he told me that, dude, it just added to the element of it, the excitement, because I could just tell on their end they were doing everything they could to make this thing happen, and then on my end I was doing everything I could to prepare it to where if this thing actually comes to fruition, it's going to be a home run.
And it's super exciting because you're right on the forefront. You are on the precipice of something brand new that tons of people may want to be a part of. Tons of organizations, multiple military organizations might say, this is a fantastic strategy to be able to properly influence the group that we're looking to, with showing them what we're really all about, with tying this thing together. If they're going to watch their sports team's heroes, they're going to watch what they're supporting.
Exactly.
I mean, it's an obvious tie-in.
Absolutely.
So for the listeners, let's really set the stage properly now. What is N.I.L? How did it come to be? Let's talk about the NCAA's reign of terror, or whatever you'd like to call it before. Right. And then, how that got struck down, the Supreme Court, yada, yada. Let's set that stage, and then we'll really start to talk about, what is your vision going forward? What is your vision going forward? How do you see this really growing?
Right. Yeah, so up until July 1st of 2021, collegiate athletes could not earn any sort of compensation for their name, image, and likeness. So think about it, like you have so many prominent collegiate athletes that went through a 4 to 5 year career and never saw a penny from what they did on the field and what value that they brought to the institutions that were making billions and billions of dollars off of them. You've got college head coaches that are making between $10 and $12 million a year for coaching, but you have all of these athletes that aren't making any sort of compensation.
What was the justification for that? Because, I was aware of that for a long time, and I have my theories on why, but how did they justify that to the kids?
The facade of amateurism. This is collegiate athletics or amateur athletics. You're not a professional yet. You have to earn the right to go play at a professional level to earn some sort of compensation. The justification is, well, you're getting a scholarship, right? Which is awesome. It's amazing. I literally can't say enough amazing things about the University of Michigan and what that degree has done for me and the doors that it's opened up. But the reality is, the day you step foot on campus, you're doing, 7 to 8 hours a day inside the facility during the season. and during some segments of the off season, you have no opportunity to actually maximize, you don't not say no opportunity, but it's significantly harder to maximize that degree to what your other counterparts on campus are doing. You don't have the time to go actually get the tutoring or do the extra curriculars in the classroom to get the same scores as some of the people that you're competing with to get into tough programs. You look at like the Ross School of Business or some other degrees that some of the athletes would want to pursue. In your freshman sophomore year, a lot of players are just kind of encouraged like, hey, probably not going to be able to do that degree. If you really want to balance your athletic schedule with your schedule as a student here, there's not much of an opportunity. In the summer times, you have to be on campus and you have to be working, right? Or you have to be doing your workouts. You don't have the same opportunity as other students of taking those internships in New York or Los Angeles to actually pursue something in finance or some other degree that you'd be interested in. So there's just a lot of I think inefficiencies with that argument of saying, well, you're actually getting a degree, so you don't deserve any sort of compensation.
Well, and if you look at it this way, I mean, yeah, the scholarship is something to put on the table, but it's probably a fraction of what that athlete is generating. So it's like you're cutting them. It'd be like I invested in a company. I was a massive equity share in it, and they were like, you know what, we'll cut you a fragment of 1%. Be appreciative and don't ask for anything else.
It's exactly what it was.
There are student athletes, in college football right now doing 7-figure endorsement deals. Okay, to think about the fact that your scholarship, was worth probably what $60,000 to $100,000 a year.
That's what I was.
And there's already some athletes clearing over $7 million. Some people are in mid 7 figures. Some of the top athletes out there. So that argument, it's just funny. It just keeps getting stomped on and stomped on over again. And the old model just looks so archaic now.
Well, 100%. Yeah. I mean, they could pay for everyone in their close family to go to college on the endorsement deal that they've got. So we need to put things into proper perspective, and just using some, well, you're getting a scholarship. That is crazy that it lasted as long as it did.
And the exciting thing, too, is like you look at athletes. One of the first things that we did and actually really put us on the map as an agency, we did the first group licensing deal in collegiate athletics. So a week after the rule change took place, we went to the MDEN, which is Michigan's official retail partner. It's like, hey, you have all of these, you have tens of thousands of Nike jerseys in your warehouse, and you're used to just doing custom nameplates for fans. Why don't we make it so people can buy jerseys of the players? And let's also make their royalty rate 4 times the amount that NFL players would make. NFL players are making between like $3 and $5 per jersey sold with their name on it. We made Michigan student athletes up to $20 per jersey sold. And so when you look at it, we had some guys clearing 6 figures just off of their jersey sales last year. And it was awesome because you look at it, it's like before that, you just had a bunch of like Denard Robinson, for example. He was on the cover of the EA Sports video game, Michigan quarterback, absolute legend. There were 14,000 number 16 Michigan jerseys sold in his senior year. 14,000. If this rule change was around back then and that royalty was in place, he would have made almost $300,000 just off of jerseys.
You guys have literally, I mean, not you guys because it took a massive group effort for this NIL thing to take place, but the game is completely different now. It's a whole new world for college athletics. Yep. Like the young kids that are growing up now, they have an incredible opportunity if they become a college athlete that they never had before. Right. The game is completely changed. This is unbelievable. Hearing these numbers, it's unbelievable.
But the bottom line is it's your name, right? So when in America was it allowed for a company to just say, you're going to be on the cover of this video game and I'm not paying you anything, right? Like that's what ended the EA Sports was Denard Robinson was the last one.
Exactly. Well, I think that's too in the Supreme Court ruling of the Allison case that took place last summer, which ultimately sparked this.
Yeah, let's discuss that just even briefly. How did it finally get changed? Because it had to have been a big movement or a big controversy to finally change it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Supreme Court found in a sweeping rule change, and like we said earlier, it takes a lot for them to all agree on it.
9-0. Yeah.
Right, exactly. There's no other commercial industry in our country where your workforce is being barred from any sort of compensation. So, they had that rule change. People say, NIL gave the athletes, the ability to make money. NIL, the rule change, it restricted the NCAA from an antitrust, type of situation. Right, so it actually stripped them of their rights to hold back collegiate athletes from exercising their rights as a human. Like, where else in the world can you not, actually monetize your likeness to have some sort of compensation? Like, there's just all these stories. There was a player on UCF's football team when I was a senior in college. He had a YouTube channel, and the NCAA said he couldn't have a YouTube channel anymore because he was making money off of
that the
his
kicker?
own page. Yeah, it was the kicker.
The kicker.
When I was there was all these like crazy rules. When I was at Michigan, my junior year, I started a clothing brand with one of my teammates, and all of my teammates, we'd wear to the hats to the game, we wear the stuff because fans started buying it. I was told by our compliance office, it's like, hey, you can continue to do this, but you can't promote it on social media. You can't, and like what they said was, you can't do any sort of action item to say, hey, purchase a product at this website, but you could say an opinion, oh, I like this product because this. There was all these little nuances, and I just kept like, why are you guys trying to protect this, this facade, you know what I mean? Like this amateurism model that's just so broken.
They were just strong-arming everyone.
Oh,
they
yeah.
were getting maximum voluntary compliance. Like they weren't, they were just making you, follow their lead. So I don't know if you answered this question or not, but like, what was finally the thing that snapped it? Like, how did this end up at the Supreme Court? Because NCAA is doing this forever.
Yeah.
So, and when did the NCAA start this, and how does it get in front of the court? Because that was a phenomenal. That's a massive point. Thank God that took place.
Right. Yeah. So it was the Allison versus NCAA case. And basically, like, Allison was suing the NCAA for the restrictions of compensation outside of his scholarship.
So one person finally stepped up and said, I am taking this to court, and I'm going to challenge this all the way.
I would say that the NCAA, though, if you look back, they have fought this since. So 92, Charles O'Bannon, who was a basketball player for UCLA, first came out because they had EA Sports had the NCAA basketball game, and he said, you cannot put me on the cover. That's my name. That's my. And the NCAA just swatted him away and beat him. In 1992 as well, Mitch Albom's book, The Fab Five, I don't know if you've ever read it. There's a story in there about Chris Webber was complaining about it. He was standing outside the M-Den, and he had just left a restaurant, and he had to put food back because he couldn't afford it. And he said, look at this jersey, $60. And it's in the book, and Mitch Albom talks about, back in 92, how this was not a sustainable model. But the NCAA fought it that long.
And they kept striking it down. They kept getting courts to rule on their side.
They have the billions of the dollars, right? The athlete's got $20 in his pocket.
Yeah, but it's still, it's like, how in the world can you possibly argue that under there's no way to articulate what they were doing and make it seem just. There's no way.
No.
It's just the way the system was set up. And it took all the way up until last year for something to change. And it's just so exciting to see the snowball effect of this thing.
So let's now get into the joint venture of like, really, how did it first start to blow up into the students? So you guys talked about, you brought in the helicopters, you put people up there, they start, Instagramming about the National Guard, they start showing the experiences. When you look at the analytics, how do you really see it taking off? And then what does that make your vision look like for the next year, 2 years, 3 years? So basically, like, as you sit here today, you have a completely different perspective than when you first sat down to put this partnership together. What do you see coming to fruition in the future?
Well, so in any marketing plan, right, you don't just develop a one-year plan. So when I came to Jared, I had a 3-year plan of what I wanted to do. Obviously, got a little bit bigger than I thought the first one. I'll give him credit, and I appreciated it. First thing, we wanted to brand the National Guard, and that was a big push. Just get the name out there again because of COVID and all that. We haven't been able to be in our communities, which is where we thrive as a National Guard, right? We live here, we serve here. So you see me at the gas station, I live right here. So we didn't have that for 2 years. So we wanted to get the brand back out there, and that's what we did. The next phase, we're calling it N.I.L 2.0. It's pretty generic, but it's what we're going with for now.
Yep. Gets the point across.
Yeah, right? So now we use University of Michigan, right? Now we want to use every athlete. And I think it goes very well with what his company is saying about, compensating athletes, right? It shouldn't just be U of M. It shouldn't just be MSU. What about the kid from Central Michigan? What about the kid from Eastern? So that's what our goal is now, is to include those kids, because they're not getting NIL deals. But you know what? There's kids at Oakland University that have 300,000 followers on Instagram. I would very much like that athlete to talk about the National Guard.
Absolutely.
And so he's going to help with that, facilitate that.
So basically, now that you've laid this initial foundation, you see that you can replicate it across countless schools, nationwide. There's really no restrictions to how big you could go with this, because the National Guard, for every member that is going to join and support and serve, they're on board. They're like, however we got to make that happen, let's make that happen. And you guys almost are sitting on this unbelievable product that you're on the forefront of something that, is changing the entire landscape.
Right. Yeah. The exciting thing about this partnership is that, like, the week after this thing went live, I got 3 different pro agencies reaching out to me asking about the partnership. It's like, hey, how did you guys set this up? Like, what did you do? What was like the foresight to do some sort of partnership? Like, this makes so much sense.
Responsiveness to an email.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's it.
Right.
I
like,
emailed him.
Think about if you never responded to that email. Think about if you just saw
right.
this random thing and you said, "Hey, I'm going to pass by it," and you weren't on top of your game.
Mm-hmm.
That little moment where you probably took 15 seconds out of your day and said, "I'm going to shoot this guy a call."
Yeah.
Drastically altered the course of not just your life, but every athlete that you will influence in the future and countless partnerships.
Yep. That's the exciting thing about, just life in general, right? I mean, there's just so many like little like pivotal moments in your life where like a decision that you made then has ripple effects for years, if not decades. Like, I'd love to see collegiate athletes partnering with the National Guard for forever from now on, right? Because it just, you're hitting the right demographic. The student athletes are excited to be there. Like when we were on site at the military base, there was 120 something of our players on the team there, coming up to me like, I didn't even know about like the National Guard or like what their background is. Like, this is so cool. These people are so nice. I mean, like,
absolutely,
it just like really validated the entire concept and shows like this is something that should take place in perpetuity because it's just a great partnership to have.
So if we were going to cut a pitch to this about, a school program director is going to watch this, or a college athlete, you're going to cut a pitch for this. Why should their program bring in this deal? Like, why should, let's say, Eastern Michigan University is like, man, maybe we want to put something together with these guys.
Right.
Why should we make it happen? How do we make it happen? What are the routes to make it?
Well, I mean, it's organic, right? It's just like you have players, collegiate athletes have such a big platform spotlighting our military, right? Men and women who sacrifice their lives for our protection. Like, there's nothing more organic than that. Like, I have a ton of clients that come to me all the time. Oh, I'm interested in partnering with this brand. I'm interested in doing this. It's like, hey, like, you as an individual, you have to be careful about who you're endorsing, right? Who are you tying yourself in with? Every player at the University of Michigan thinks these guys are freaking badass. You know what I mean? They want to partner with the National Guard and to show that like there is appreciation for their service to our country. So, I mean, there's just so many different reasons why this makes sense, and it's a good company, a good brand to associate yourself with.
Yeah, I mean, it's the National Guard. You're not tying into a company that you don't know about the leadership or the decisions they're going to make or any scandals that they're going to fall into. It's the National Guard.
Right. And the carryover is significant too. Like, there's so many players like, wow, like I feel like I have a lot in common with, this lieutenant or this individual that I met at the base, because there's so much crossover between being a high-level athlete and being, a member of the military.
And let's be honest, if you're working with the National Guard and you have the support and sponsorship from them, it's prestigious. And if you go into other partnerships and other deals and you already say, I'm representing the National Guard and we've been working in partnership, that adds a lot of weight to the conversation. That's a large brand to say, hey, we've done partnership deals and it's been successful thus far.
Yeah, for me, being a fan, right, and a lot of my soldiers that were there too, they were nervous. I'll be honest. Like, these guys are gonna come in, they're D1 athletes, they're gonna be jerks, and they weren't. Like, people forget these kids, right? They're on the $1 billion stage, but they're 18, 19, 20 years old, right? So when we did like an unveiling, and I'm sure he remembers it, but we opened the bay doors and they saw their helicopters out there. Like, that's what you guys are riding in. Like, every one of them had their phone out. They were like, what?
Right.
Children. They were like children.
No, of course.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And I remember being in the military and seeing my first helicopter. Even I was, we're laughing like this. We fly on these things all day, every day. Like, it's not a big deal to us. But, and then that connection, like you said it earlier, you made a comment about accountability, responsibility, and that's what we have, and that's what they have. And that's what, in the end, that's what got the deal done. Michigan has an attack program, and then he has a social contract that they have to adhere to, and so do we. And that's what tied it all together. So at the very end, the 2-star General Rogers, who's going to come on your podcast, I believe.
Like
he'll talk about it. That was, I think, one of the deciding factors was, these guys have a code of conduct that matches our code of conduct.
Yep.
And these are the kids that I would want in the National Guard. So why would I want them advertising for us. And
Right. Yep.
24 hours prior, we got it done. I didn't tell Jared the whole time. I was sleeping
Yep.
about 2 hours a night.
I remember
previous
getting that
week,
call
but-
from you. It's like, hey, like what is in place here at Michigan? I was like, oh, like this attack program that the team has. I bet if I shared it with you, you would look at it and say, this is almost like a carbon copy of what standards we hold our soldiers to. So they're just like the crossover is just it's super organic. The players are looking at this thing like, we want them to realize that we're very similar, and I think that's the same way that the Guard looked at the partnership as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question I want to ask you about. We were talking about like plummeting military enrollment and things like this. What message would you send to the younger generation about like being in the military has drastically changed your life, and it's probably made you a better man. It's built a lot of who you are as a human being. You give off a great aura. You have a good presence to you. It's obviously done a lot of tremendous things for your life. And with the good, there's always bad. But if you were going to, send a message to people that were thinking about the military or hadn't even formed an opinion on it yet, why would you tell them in this current age when anxiety is an epidemic and everybody's struggling? I mean, there's a mental health crisis in this country.
Absolutely.
1 million people are struggling. A lot of these people don't have structure. They don't have routine. They don't have brotherhood. They don't have accountability, etc. Why should they consider the military?
So I think you nailed it right there. So I'll go back. So when I graduated high school, right, I athletics was what I wanted to do. I went to high school to talk to girls and play sports. I didn't really care about reading, right? So I graduated with like a 2.0. So that's why I had to go to community college, right? And I still didn't have the structure or anything like that. I was a smart kid, but I didn't have that structure until I joined the military, right? So I think if some of my teachers from high school were here and I was telling them that, hey, I'm starting my dissertation to complete my doctorate, they would be like, no, that's not possible. But the military gave that to me. They gave me that structure, support, and understanding how to define a goal, right, as opposed to a dream, right, because they're two different things. And that's what I've gotten out of it. And I would say in today's age, one of our biggest issues is that employment is just unemployment's super low, right? There's good jobs. Kids are making $18 an hour at pizza places, right? So they don't need the National Guard. They don't need that extra paycheck. But when you get up into later on in your life, when you're getting like those serious jobs, you got to have a resume that's different than somebody else. And having that leadership, going through the military and our schools and learning resiliency and things of that nature, that's going to separate you from other people because everybody's resume is going to be the same. And we just the resiliency that you get from the military, obviously, that's the number one thing they teach, right? You have to have that. You have to overcome sometimes dangerous obstacles, to succeed. So,
and one of the things I preach to a lot of people, and I've witnessed it with my fighters, Josh Parisian being a perfect example. He was from the UP, by the way. He grew up in Escanaba, Michigan.
Oh boy,
He had a really dark background. Never played a sport his entire life. Was over 300 pounds when he joined this team, and now he's in the UFC and the only heavyweight from Michigan in the UFC. And he completely built his life to the top. Yeah, he just got a $50,000 bonus in his last fight. Came home with a $100K check for 8 minutes of work.
Man, that's great.
So
it's efficient use of your time.
It was amazing. And the thing about him is that I've told people for years the number one quality that makes him successful is resiliency. He just refuses to stay down when he gets knocked down. He's been knocked down many times, but the man always gets back up. So when you look at investing into yourself, whether it's military service or it's education or whatever it is, or chasing your passion, whenever you invest in yourself, it is going to dramatically alter the course of your life, even if you don't see it yet. And generally for the better if it's a good investment, because you're building the characteristics that are necessary to succeed at a high level. And that's what I see on a lot of military people, is they know how to structure themselves. They get their life together. They know how to get up and do something they don't really want to do, but it's for the good, right? It's what they need to do. It keeps them aligned with the course that they're on. It keeps them on track for the mission. So many people need to realize that it's not just the service, it's the character development that comes with the service. That let's say you're just going for 2 years or 4 years. You're going to be way better off if you did not have those structures within yourself.
Yeah, Admiral McRaven, so he was special operations commander. He was in charge when they got Bin Laden, right? So he has a book and he talks about that, and his thing is make your bed, right?
One of my favorite books.
Right?
I encourage all my clients because it's an easy read.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Just get up and make your bed. You've already done something, right? 2 minutes into your day, you've already accomplished something.
If
and this
you
is an admiral, right?
100%. And you're like, yeah, make my bed, so what? You almost overlook it. You think that it's trivial. You think it's not that important. But the point is, if you can structure yourself and do the things that even if you don't feel like doing them, you can get it done, that is going to yield so much success versus the version of yourself that always procrastinates or puts things off, etc.
Coach Harbaugh always preaches having a battle rhythm, right? What do you do? What is your recipe to your success? Everybody, it'll look a little bit different. But at the core of it, it's structure, right? It's waking up, it's doing that same routine every morning, different positive things that you're just kind of stacking, and that spills over into all the different facets of your life. But your battle rhythm is critical to actually having success and being consistent, because I think anybody can be successful for a short amount of time, but if you don't have your own kind of structure in place, there's no beauty in the consistency of it. I think the consistency is your hallmark of your success. If you're able to actually do something, be passionate about it and have structure around it.
1,000%
over time.
Now, you've experienced a meteoric rise to success in the first 18 months.
I don't know if meteoric's the term, but I hope that's where we're going.
Listen, if you put together the country's first partnership between NCAA athletes and the National Guard, you have a meteoric rise.
All right, I'll take it.
My first 18 months was failure after failure after falling on my face, after being broke. Yeah. No, you had a meteoric rise in the way that's an incredible start. Have you looked into the future and thought like where this thing is going to lead? Do you have any big term goals you'd want to share on the podcast now? Do you see yourself being like a nationwide sports agency what do you see for the future? Because you've had an incredible start. When you told me you only started this 18 months ago, I was like, my God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And that's a great question because I don't know exactly where this is going to go. But I know that the trajectory of the N.I.L space and just kind of where our company's positioned, there's a lot of different opportunities. And I just kind of want to build something that I know will have long-term sustainable success. So I think that where N.I.L is going is that collegiate athletes are going to have more rights in the future. And I want to position ourselves to represent student athletes at Michigan on their rights. And on top of that, I love the endorsement space and I love being able to represent athletes and mainly football players. I'd love to be able to take it actually vertical, represent players from the time they get to Michigan all the way through their professional careers and handling their endorsements on that end. But there's just different pathways where this can go. We have a consumer product line of business where we're doing licensed apparel for Michigan. We're doing licensed trading cards for Michigan. We have an NFT license at Michigan. We're trying to create more engagement between the fan base and the players. So there's a lot of different, I think, paths that this can take. But, my plan in the next 2 to 3 years is to just try to grow the company to sustain and service our existing lines of business, which are, we want to be the best endorsement, representation company and agency in the N.I.L space. So I want to make sure Michigan, that the fan base knows and that recruits know, if you come and play football at the University of Michigan, you have the best earning potential in college sports. You're going to have an agency, Valiant Management Group, that is handling it, and players at Michigan are earning at the highest level in collegiate athletics. That's my goal for the near term.
And that's a massive win for the school. That's a huge appeal and a reason that the top athletes, which, you're already the University of Michigan, but if you add one more cherry on top, a little more icing on the cake and say, and we also have this agency, Valiant, that goes to bat for our people. They've created, state-of-the-art deals, brand new deals, worked with the National Guard. You're going to have opportunity here that you would not get anywhere else. And it's from a gentleman that's in the lineage of University of Michigan. That's incredible. Yep. It's like your life has positioned you perfectly to fall into the opportunities that you're seeing in front of you.
Right. I appreciate that. And that's the exciting part is there were just so many different, falling on my face type experiences right out of college that got me to this point. And who knows, if the pandemic didn't happen, I could have very well just been enjoying my experience at Stryker and stayed a medical device salesman living in Chicago, and there wouldn't be Valley Management Group. There may not even be an agency doing stuff for Michigan
When you
athletes.
told me that part of your story, I literally thought, dude, that was the perfect stop button on your life and say, hey, man, before you wake up at 35 and realize you hate what you do and who gives a shit about the dollars in your bank account, you pressed pause, you took a look around, you said, maybe I can do something better than this. Mm-hmm. And thank God you made that decision.
Right.
That's a tremendous decision in a better direction.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the things I want to ask you about as a young entrepreneur that's launching this, this massive endeavor, how do you delegate responsibility when like you're at the forefront and your passion is all in? I can see it in your eyes when you talk that you are all in on this, but you're going to get to a point where you have to delegate responsibility to other people. Do you have other people within the company already? Are you planning to recruit in the near future, et cetera?
Yeah, and that's been the biggest learning experience for me. I'm at 26 years old, started the company at 25. I'm incredibly blessed with amazing partners. I've got 3 partners that are all Michigan alumni, successful businessmen in their own right, and that are like, I guess, somewhat retired, so they have time to actually pursue this with me. And while they're not here in the state of Michigan and they're remote and we do stuff remotely, we wouldn't be where we're at now without these partners. On top of that, I have 6 interns at the moment, and we're planning to expand that closer to 12 throughout the year. But like one of the most exciting things about what we've built in our company is the relationship with the University of Michigan. While we don't actually get resources like financially from the school to build a company, we're our own independent, privately owned group. We have internship programs set up. So I have an internship program at the law school where I get I'm going to have 3 law students getting class credit to intern for us to review contracts and to strike contracts for us. We've got an internship program with the sport management division at Michigan. So we had 6 internships lined up for the fall where we're getting, young college students that would love to be sports agents one day but don't know how to get into space because it's tough to get those internship
tremendous.
positions.
Yeah, smart.
And then one program set up with the entrepreneurship program at Michigan as well. So we're going to have about 12 interns coming this fall, and we're in the process of hiring 2 full-time employees. So we're hoping by end of September, we're looking like a team of 10 to 12 versus a team of probably like 4 to 5 right now. So excited about that growth.
Do you have a girlfriend or a wife in the picture that has to juggle? I was going to say it's tremendously difficult to balance a relationship into being a young entrepreneur. I know from experience.
Yeah, the work-life balance is probably not really
non-existent, right?
Yeah.
You're 100% on one
In the
end.
last year and a half, it's like I've sacrificed a lot of like just social activities and just I'm like, I don't know if you can tell by my personality. I like to I'm more outgoing, and I think up until I started this company, like I really loved being around my friends and going out being in the social scene. And I've had to scale a lot of that back, and it's been the best experience of my life. I'm laser focused on what we're building right now. Would love to maybe not do 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, like I'm doing right now almost. But I wouldn't trade this experience for anything. I've learned more in the year and a half of building this company than I really did in any of my educational experience. And I, love what I did and, what I study here at the University of Michigan, but I think there's just something that comes along with building a company and that practical experience. And I just felt like it set me up for long-term success.
Absolutely.
It is funny. He'll text me at 11 o'clock at night or call at 7 o'clock and immediately apologize. And like, I'm still in my uniform. Like, I got my computer. Like, we're good, man.
Yeah.
Like,
it goes both ways too.
Yeah.
I remember there was one time at like 8 o'clock. You're like, "Hey man, sorry for like the late call." I'm like, "No, man. Like we this isn't a 9 to 5 kind of like I have to.
Yeah.
Like I wake up and feel like I get to do what I do. So it's like I'm always available. If it's related to my work.
I understand that to the fullest, and I'm marrying the woman that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with, and we dated for 5 years before I asked her to marry me, and she's the first woman ever that's how I live my life. I live my life 1,000% into the things that I do. Like, there is no work time.
Yeah.
There is no from these hours I work on my craft or my business or with my people. No, it's every moment of the day. If I can make progress in a direction that's going to yield success for me or the people around me, I'm going all in.
Right.
You got a great, amazing thing that I need to know about at 2 a.m., call me, get a hold of me. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people in our regular society don't understand that. They don't understand that level of commitment, probably because they're working a job that they're not really passionate about or that their head's in it.
Absolutely.
You just want it to end. At 5 o'clock, you're like, thank God that is done until the next day.
Yep.
But when you're venturing out on your own or you're doing something that you really believe in, especially if it makes an impact on other people, that is good, right? Because you're making a tremendous impact for other people. Both of you gentlemen are making an impact. It's why wouldn't you go all in?
Right.
If you can yield more by giving more, why not make that happen? A lot of people don't understand that balance.
Yeah.
But like when I see you talking, it reminds me exactly of when I was 26, 27, I was the same way. I'm like, no, I'm living, breathing, eating, sleeping, dreaming. It doesn't matter about the vision.
Yeah, well, that's like the exciting thing about like when you find something you're passionate in. You know what I mean? And it's just like, thank God I had family members that like encouraged me to stay the course, because if I had a father that's like, no, you need to work at this corporate job, you need to do this, like I wouldn't be where I'm at today, and I wouldn't be making an impact, in the way that my company is right now. So it's just I'm blessed beyond measures because I've had those influential people in my life. My mentor, who's a very successful NFL agent, who encouraged me just to take that leap. Right? Hey, skip a paycheck for 6 months. Do deliveries for your dad's apparel company. You know what I mean? Have people questioning you. Hey, what are you doing? You graduated from Michigan. Why are you working this job? Or why are you not, doing what your buddies are doing, in a big city? Like I was living in Chicago, which is very much the scene for somebody in their mid-20s. And I decided to move back to my college town, right? Where there's none of my, guys I went to school with are living in Ann Arbor, Michigan, at 26 years old, right? Everyone's kind of in bigger cities working different jobs. So people looked at me like I was kind of weird to go do that. At the same time, it's just like I'm so like laser focused on this project and this passion that it didn't really stop me.
That is incredible insight for young kids that want to chase a dream. Is like you're gonna have to be willing to be ridiculed, to be viewed in a negative light, to go through all these things if you want to really take a chance at what you love. But everybody that has done it is going to tell you, like, you're going to just have to jump, man. Yeah. You're going to have to just walk off the cliff and, like, figure it out.
Right.
And 95% of people or whatever will just never make that first step because they want to see the next step. You will learn the steps that are necessary as you go. You will literally fall on your face up the stairs.
I think a lot of this too, like from my experience, it's ties back into that resiliency factor. You know what I mean? You have to be resilient. Like I've failed so many different times in so many different ways, both on a large scale and a small scale. But like it's kind of just that resiliency that just like you have a short memory. It's a next play mentality like we have in football. It's just like
that's what's fascinating about you though, because most people I meet that have that, they get that from a lot of the times like extreme struggle or failure or hitting rock bottom, or like they get it from like, I don't know, just a different. You're just like, I was encouraged. So I said, let's do it.
Right.
You're one of the, I've never really met too many people like that. Generally, an extreme tragedy in life, a traumatic experience, a rock bottom, a complete heartache and heartbreak that finally brings out that like fire in your chest that makes you say, despite any obstacle, I'm going.
Right.
You're just like, man, I had a phenomenal structure. That's like an incredible shout out to you as a human being, your family, and the people that you kept in your circle, because that is not a norm.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But I do look at it like in the holistic approach to it. Like there's a lot of struggle, right? There's a lot of different, moments in my life where it didn't feel like I was going in the right direction. Like, living in Chicago and not having like a paycheck per se, and then doing deliveries for my dad, like it just felt like to myself rock bottom, and like my dad's got, multiple of his own businesses, but going through the coronavirus pandemic, like those are the companies that were hit the worst, right? So like financially, it didn't feel like I was in a good spot, right? Like I have such high expectations and a lot of ambition for myself. So that was my breaking point where I had to figure it out, right? And granted, like just that finding that passion and knowing that's what I wanted to do, it's really what set up. But I think there is beauty in that struggle, like those pivotal moments in your life where you're feeling like you're rock bottom, and the only way to do it is just pick yourself back up.
Listen, you're not going to learn those things from a textbook. You're not going to hear a lecture on what it is like to be at rock bottom, wondering how in the world you're going to eat tomorrow or how you're going to get the gas to put in your car. You cannot experience that unless you experience it. When you go through it, it teaches you the most invaluable lessons that will carry on for the rest of your life. Right. One of the final things I want to ask you about, Mr. Johnson, is leadership in the military has changed over the last couple of years, or the last decade or stuff. Do you think it's heading in a good direction, a neutral direction, or a bad direction? Because the leadership model in general has changed dramatically. Like when you came up into the military, it is a different military that exists now. And there's a different generation of children coming up now. And maybe if those kids are looking at an old format and be like, hey, that's not for me, there's no way I can go into that, but it's shifting, maybe it's going to be better than they think. Or just talk to me about how you've witnessed the leadership change over the last, let's say, half decade, 2 decades.
So obviously when I came in, it was a combat environment, right? So leadership was you do this because if you don't, you could die. So it was a very direct approach. But I had great leaders, man, throughout my whole career. And I've always told my soldiers, you can learn, honestly, more from a bad leader than from a good, because it teaches you what not to do. That's how I've developed my entire leadership mentality. I see the military now moving more towards servant leadership, transformational leadership, rather than transactional, right? You do something for me and then I'll take care. That's not how it works anymore, right? So the new leadership style that I see in the younger generation, because my rank right now, they're 22-year-old, 23-year-old kids at this rank, right? I served a long time before I switched to that leadership position. But I see a lot more of the servant leadership, the transformational leadership. So we're here to develop you, because the stronger you are, the stronger we are, right? And again, that ties into sports, right? Like they don't. Your guy might be a walk-on or whatever, but he plays a role on that team, or she plays a role on that team, and so they have to go to the practice, right? They have to meet all the same standards, and there's a reason, because we're like the old saying, we're only as strong as our weakest link, right? And I think that's what the military is going to, is a more of a transformational leadership where we're going to develop you into what you want to be. I do that with my soldiers, right? What do you want to be? Just like you asked him, where do you see yourself? Because if you don't see where you're going, then what do we do? What are we doing here? Like, it's pointless.
This is actually really good to hear. I mean, a lot of you've seen it in corporate America. They used to rule through fear and like, you will produce these numbers or you are fired. And now you're starting to see these true leaders emerge. You know, that understand like the Maxwell 5 levels of leadership, that start to be like, we are going to inspire people to be better. We are going to make them want to be a part of this culture. We're going to, you know, bring out their greatness by showing them a reflection of their greatness, not managing through this like big stick policy. You know what I mean? And if we're witnessing that in the military as well, a lot of the younger kids might not realize like, hey, I could benefit tremendously from that type of leadership. It's not going to be just someone screaming in my face, you know, trying to break me down and holding.
They don't even do. I don't know if you guys remember back in the day. You probably seen videos where you get off the bus at the basic training and they're yelling at you, and they call it the Shark Tank, right?
Yeah.
That's gone.
It's like a hazing ritual.
That's gone.
Basically.
All that's gone. You know, so corrective action, push-ups. We used to call it getting smoked when I was. It doesn't happen anymore. It's 5 push-ups, 5 whatever actions, and whoever's correcting you does it with you. So if you're a leader, you know, and you see Private Wangler over here screwing up, he's got to do these corrective actions, but you do it with him because you're showing him, hey, we're in this together. When you screw up, we both get punished. That's the new way, right? Nobody knows that.
But I think that's actually a way to like connect with this generation that's coming up, because I do think like that like old school style of like, and I'm seeing it in football a lot too. It's like where you're just trying to bury somebody into the dirt. You don't feel like they're in your corner. You know what I mean? You almost feel like they're out to get you. And I'm not saying like that's a right way or a wrong way, but like when I played football and like I'm not that far removed. I'm only 4 years out. I'm starting to see like more of a transition away from that old school trying to bury you into the ground and run you out of the program to like, hey, we're in this together. I'm screaming at you, like, but I'm also here. If I'm not screaming at you, there's a reason, right? It's probably a reason that you shouldn't be here, right? If I'm yelling at you and I'm trying to bring you up, it's because I care about you and we're a part of this team. We're in this together. So I do think that that's a way, a little bit, from my experience, a little bit better way to connect with, you know, who you're trying to develop and who you're trying to lead.
I think it's crucial that we just cover that on the podcast too, because it is what the younger generation is looking for. They want to know that someone's in their corner. They want to know that you're going to help them level up through the experience instead of just, because the other type of leadership does work. But generally, you appreciate that leader 10 years later.
I agree.
Yeah.
There's a healthy balance to that.
A lot of the times you hate that person during that time that's holding you accountable, that is crushing you. You're like, this guy is the worst man that's ever lived.
Right.
Then you look back and you go, man, I never grew as much as when I was under that person's leadership.
Right.
So it's just kind of changing it. But both forms of leadership can be effective. But it's more about the demographic of the people that you're working with. So if the culture has changed in terms of resiliency and ability to handle things, whatever that comes from, whether it's social media or structures in the home or parenting or whatever it is, kids are clearly very different now. Entitlement levels are different. Like I never questioned my father growing up. I wasn't. That thought didn't even question. Like,
you didn't have that right.
There was
exactly.
There was a barrier somewhere in my own brain that if I thought to question him, it would just be like, just do it. Just go ahead. And later on, when you're an adult, if you don't want to do it, then don't do it. But things have changed dramatically. So it seems like we've had to adjust and pivot accordingly. But that will yield much better results. Because what is the final product you're trying to create is highly efficient human beings that are soldiers.
Well-rounded.
Yes. So if the old method no longer yielded that result or got an incredible drop-off rate, we have to pivot. We have to adjust. And we have to say, okay, all we care about is the result. How do we produce that result in the current culture? I believe it's what you guys are talking about right now. And I'm really glad I asked that question because I feel like a lot of people do not know that. Like, I didn't even know that. I still thought the military was you were going to get crushed into the floor.
Right.
You thought it.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's just kind of like when you grow up, like what seems like the stigma that is attached to the
It
military.
absolutely
And
Full
like,
metal jacket.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But even in our experience there at the base, like, it was like just to a lot of those players who have never had like any sort of interaction with a soldier before, like the fact that they were just so outgoing and like just so personable to them, it actually humanized the military in a way. And so like it's less away from that like, structure like of, almost striking fear into the people that they're being around.
That is
to,
what it was.
Like, these are real people, these are real humans, and they're here to protect.
100%. I work with the Livingston County Juvenile Court, and I have for like almost 7 years with a lot of the struggling kids. They'll send them in here, and I'll partner them with like a professional athlete, or I'll work with them personally if I have the time. And one of the things I've noticed is a lot of these kids now are coming from very broken homes or lack of structure, or they don't really have anyone that gives a shit about them at all. So when they come into your program and you're actually like in their corner, like you're pushing them, but you're showing them that like, man, I'm doing this because you can be better than what you are. And you deserve to bring that man to life or that woman to life. And the world deserves that. Because if we can create more strong people, more people that are resilient, that have character, that have work ethic, that have responsibility, it's going to drastically shape many things in culture. And we need it now more than ever. More than ever, we need strong human beings, men and women. So, gentlemen, if there's anything else you'd like to talk about on the podcast, we can do it. If not, we at 1 hour and 10 minutes, we've crushed this dialogue. I feel like we've captured fantastic viewpoints. We've captured a lot of insight. There's incredibly exciting things going on for NCAA athletes. I mean, this is a game changer. This is a true. People throw that word around a lot, like, oh, this is a game changer.
Historic shift.
This is a historic shift that in 20, 30, 40 years, people will look back and point to this time and say that was a pivotal moment where college athletics, completely transformed and people's lives changed dramatically.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Look, I appreciate you having us on and be able to talk about this. Maybe, in the next 6 to 12 months we'll do for a check-in, because what N.I.L. and what my line of business looks like right now is dramatically different than what it was 6 months ago. And, completely different than what it was 2 years ago before the rule change. So it'll be really exciting to see where this goes. I really appreciate you having me on to tell my story and talk about our company and where we think this thing can go, and just spotlight this cool partnership that Jared was able to kind of bring to me and put together.
Yeah, I'd love to maybe a year from now, 2 years now, if we circle back and we literally, talk about how this blew up and what it's done for people's lives, and maybe some testimonials from some of the athletes. Like, we could really do a cool thing. So, man, I hope you can continue to pursue your dream to the fullest, Jared. It was an honor to sit with you today. Jared, thank you for your service and thank you for what you do. And, we'll wrap this thing up.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.